Hello, I'm Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 27 of the Wheatley podcast. As always, thank you very much for all your support, for your listening and your, contributing to the podcast, and also to the live shows that we've been doing on Saturday evenings, which have now moved to Sundays, by the way. Recording this bank holiday Monday, but we actually did an episode of it last night. It was good crack, and I messed up the song, because I always do, but that's what I get for learning it. Maybe 3 hours before we went on, I decided to learn a different song, and I've obviously messed up the lyrics because I have no memory, but it was good crack. So thanks for joining us there, and also thanks to Leah for last week's episode. We got some great responses from that. She was brilliant, and I've now joined a book club, so I'm learning and picking up new things all the time, so it's great. So I want to introduce my guest this week. She is the owner of Westside Yoga in Athlone here, and her name is Elaine Burke. How are you, Elaine?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me.
No, absolutely. It's great to have you here, and thanks for taking time out, obviously, in your bank holiday.
Oh, no problem.
It's pretty cool.
Happy to do it.
Good. So we'll start at the beginning. Just a short history of your upbringing, please.
Sure. So I am from Roscommon. I'm from Ballintubber. I don't know if you know where that is.
I don't.
It's near Castlereagh.
Okay.
So I'm 35 now, and I guess I lived at home until I was 17, and then I moved up to Galway to go to college. I am one of seven, so I'm the youngest of seven.
Right.
And 5 girls, 2 boys. And my upbringing was quite challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been brought up around a lot of alcohol and some violence as well. So I suppose that's probably what gave rise to anxiety in childhood, really. I was quite a happy child, very interested in the stars, in astronomy, in animals. I loved acting. I was always singing and things like that. And then as I started to get a little bit older, I suppose I kind of became a little bit more introverted, and I was quite unsure of myself. I suppose in my teenage years they were quite tough. I definitely wouldn't go back.
Okay.
So it was challenging. I had anxiety for a lot of my teenage years, and I always wanted to get out of home. That was, I can remember for years that was my, if people say what's your goals, my goal was always just like, I just want to live by myself, or I just want to go traveling, or I couldn't wait until I got to make my own decisions. That was always what I wanted to do. So there was kind of that longing to be in a place kind of where I call the shots rather than someone else. So
so the next question was going to be, when did you first become aware of mental health? But you say there about anxiety in your childhood and that. Yeah. When did you know it was anxiety rather than just a feeling that you were getting, To put the label of anxiety on it, probably not until I was more of an adult, really. I probably would have labeled it as being nervous. But I think the kind of the sort of knock-on effect of that didn't come until I was in my early 20s. Like, I would have always had a very good can-do attitude. I'd kind of push myself to do things that I was probably afraid of doing or nervous because I just thought that that's what people did. But it was only when I was older then I was kind of like, oh no, I actually really don't want to do that. And it's probably not good for me to do that. But I kind of, I was always afraid of people dying when I was younger. All right.
So I'd be really nervous over that.
Yeah.
So I remember like I was 8 or 9 and I was so scared of my parents or my siblings dying that I would like cry myself to sleep at night time. And this would happen all the time. And then my parents were like, you know, you have to snap out of this. Like, what's going on with you? We're going to take you to like a psychiatrist if you don't stop.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, okay, I better stop then. But yeah, that was so lots of fears of things, fears of something happening to my mother. So I guess all the signs were there. Like, I wasn't fully content in whatever was going on. I knew there was an underlying kind of sense of a lack of control. And that kind of led, I suppose, to the anxiety. And
it's one of Sean Allen was on maybe 4 weeks ago, and he spoke about that. When he was young, he always had a like unease about him, you know, and he was being picked on a bit in school, so obviously he could put a finger on it, like. So when you speak about, you know, worrying about people dying, I had I think I spoke about it before, but I had this thing of the house going on fire. I was obsessed at this. It was only in Athlone. Now I lived in Dublin, but my dad was in Athlone, so we used to come down.
Right.
And I had this thing, and I was obsessed with this idea that the house is going to go on fire. And you know, it must be how anxiety manifests itself when you're a kid. That you can't really, like, we can figure it out now and maybe chat about it, but as a kid, there's no way of getting it out of you. You know, you don't know what it is or whatever. So once I had that thing that you're talking about, but I ran downstairs to my mum bawling, crying. I was like, what'll I do if you or my daddy dies? You know, I had it once, and it was like terrifying. So it's very sad that it happens to people so young now, isn't it?
And it's very real, you know, it's very real for the child. And I think that's, you know, where people say, oh, you know, they can say snap out of it, but it is a very real emotion, a real feeling that you're feeling. So it's tough. I remember having OCD, really bad OCD, now that I know what OCD is. And I remember reading, listening to Shane Filan from Westside. I think I was about 9 or 10. And he talked about how he had OCD.
All right.
And how he overcame it. So I can't remember the techniques that he gave, but whatever they were, I did it. I did exactly what he said to do.
Right.
And I would be like, I'd have to tap the door on my way out twice. And then I'd have to do it with, you know, if I did it with my left arm, I'd have to do it with my right. But that was only an odd number. So I'd have to do it with an even number. So I could be, you know, 10 minutes trying to get out the door.
Really? Yeah.
So I remember actually, like, almost training myself out of the OCD. And I obviously grew out of it as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, other things manifest. But it was just interesting, you know. It's
weird that you can grow out of something good, like that. My younger brother had the OCD when he was quite young, and he's grown out of it. And I think I've grown into it, you know. So it's worked the opposite way. But so, like, we'll talk a bit about, obviously, because you're here to talk about your yoga and your meditation. So when did you first get into yoga?
I got into yoga probably about maybe 2009, 2010. But I have to say it wasn't something that I enjoyed actually anytime I did it. Just for whatever reason, maybe I wasn't ready to do it or something. So I kind of went a few times and I was a bit like, oh, you know, it's hard. I'm sore. You know, it brought up a lot of emotions for me, like kind of like, I want to do that, but I can't do that. So why can't I do that? Oh no, I mustn't be good at it. That sort of thing, like the ego kind of rising. And I remember going, when I lived in London actually, a few times with a flatmate of mine, and I would feel really good when I came out, and then there'd be this like wave of emotion. So you'd have the high and then the low. Yeah. And I was just like, oh God, I'm not going back to yoga again. God, I had I cried for like a half an hour after that. Like, that's not good, you know.
Yeah.
And
was the low more lasting than the high then?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it lasted longer. It was just more that the emotions that it brought up for me, like a vulnerability or sadness, or grief, I completely disregarded them at that time. So I was very much like, oh no, I don't want to feel those feelings, so I better not go to yoga again. But then there'd be curiosity, like a certain time would pass and I would be like, oh, actually, yeah, let's go back to yoga. But I was probably a lot more interested in meditation before yoga.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I suppose I came into yoga through meditation, and possibly the styles of yoga that I was practicing, I didn't necessarily resonate with me at that time.
Right.
So yeah, it's just kind of a mixed sort of.
Actually, because that leads into the next question beautifully,
Okay.
right? Because there are many different styles of yoga.
Yeah.
Something that I've only recently, and I say recently since I wrote this episode, or since I started writing this episode, and I saw that there's a couple of styles that you teach. So
Yeah.
can you explain your style compared to maybe a couple of others? Obviously, you don't need to cover everyone.
Yeah, sure. So what I was initially trained in is a style called vinyasa, vinyasa karma. So vinyasa is a kind of a sequence of movements with breath. So you sequence the breath to the movement.
Okay.
And it comes from a style. It's kind of, I suppose, a more westernized, and I'm probably going to be pulled up in this definition, but a westernized style of Ashtanga yoga, which is a kind of a more physical practice, where you will count and you will chant and things like that. So that was what I trained in initially, and I would tend to teach my classes in that style quite a lot, depending on the sort of theme of the class, or if I wanted to go a little bit harder or softer. Just depends on the time of the day or whatever it might be. But the idea of this krama is where you will sequence the postures in order to stimulate your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, so your fight or flight response, as well as your rest and digest side of your nervous system. So it's really to help build resilience as you move. So I'm not super focused on the physicality of the postures. It's more connecting to the breath as you move in a sequence, and switching off the mind so that you can sort of go a little bit deeper into the body.
Yeah.
That's kind of the style. But the actual style, I suppose, is vinyasa. But I bring in yin. I've done trainings in yin yoga, which is yin yoga would come more from Chinese philosophy, and it's a kind of a slower pace to it. A lot more floor-based postures rather than standing, which you'd have in vinyasa. Yin is kind of a more feminine, not a more feminine, but it would capture more the feminine qualities of stillness and the phases of the moon and things like that. Again, would stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, so your rest and digest. So I guess typically if you're anxious, you will kind of have a tendency to live more in the sympathetic side of your nervous system. So, your heart rate will be increased, your pupils will be dilated, your blood pressure is up, and when that happens to the body, things like digestion tend to turn off, and your immune response isn't as effective. So again, this style of like yin yoga or a softer side of vinyasa will help to stimulate more your parasympathetic nervous system. Yeah.
I think it was vinyasa that I was doing, and I think the breathing thing was quite difficult for me to get used to. I'll just explain to the people who are listening. I just did a little bit of yoga before. I didn't go to a class. It was fully online. I think I ran out of steam a bit with it because I was kind of doing the same, maybe 4 or 5 videos.
Okay.
And I did it every day, and I think maybe overdid it.
Okay.
And like I said to you before, I think if I maybe went to a class, I might get more out of it, Yeah. And I think like, I think it would properly, help with my anxiety and even with the depressive side of things as well, because like you say, you do get a high from these things. Like I get a high from jiu-jitsu or from running. It's the same thing goes with yoga, and it's just fitting it all in, and you know, trying to get there. But so where did you study then?
I studied in Australia, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How long were you in Australia for?
I was in Australia for almost 4 years.
Right.
And yeah, I kind of went there. And I had come from Thailand and Bali for a while, so I didn't know anyone in Australia. I knew like maybe two people, and I happened to live beside a yoga studio, and I'd been doing a good bit of yoga in London, but yeah, I had done a shaken meditation retreat in Bali, and after that it was like really life changing. So I wasn't really interested in drinking really. And you know, I guess socially when you go out and you go drinking you meet more people, but I wasn't interested in doing that. So I lived beside a yoga studio, and I just went there like all the time, as much as I could. And then I went to a talk one evening by this lady. It was a philosophy talk, and she happened to run a yoga studio in the next suburb. Okay. And as soon as I listened to her, I was like, oh my God, like I want to study with this woman. So I went and met her, and then I went to some of her classes and kind of got to know her a bit. And then I went and did the training with her, and it was over a year. So I got to really kind of, it definitely put me through my paces in terms of, it was like we had a lot of alignment training and the physical side of yoga, but it was very much the spiritual, esoteric, philosophical, meditative side, which I was really interested in, which is why I wanted to study with her. So it was very much a holistic idea of yoga, which I really liked. And so I did that there, and then I went on to do yin training, restorative trainings with different people, and I completed a meditation teaching training as well, and I still have a mentor that I work with in Australia for that, just if I'm doing something and I want somebody to double check it.
Good to have.
It's really good to have, actually. I think Russell Brand does a podcast on mentors, or it's in one of his books or something, where he talks about like the importance of having a mentor, and definitely where you can run ideas over somebody who's been there before and who's been through all of it. It's definitely helpful. Of
course. I think it's great, like, because in everything, like with experience like that, like, you know, to have someone with experience like that, I should say, it's always great. So when you obviously came back to Ireland, what about then the inception of Westside Yoga? How did that happen? That's a bit. To start a business like that is a huge.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't planned to move back to Ireland when we did move back. My sister ended up getting a brain tumor. She's okay now. She's perfect health, thank God. But I had been quite homesick for a while, and because I'd lived away for years, and I was homesick, and then that happened, and I had kind of finished my job, and I was sort of teaching yoga here and there, but it was nothing permanent kind of, and I just decided to move home. I was like, I'm going to move home for a while and see what happens. So we moved back to Athlone, and then I just happened to be in a class one day. I stopped teaching yoga from maybe January to maybe like April, and I just went down the road to a class one day that was going on, and I sat in the class, and then I was chatting to the ladies, and the teacher was finishing up, and she was like, oh, I'm really sorry, but I haven't found another teacher to replace. And I was kind of sitting there, and I was like, oh, this is like a sign from the universe. Like, so then I kind of approached her, and I started teaching, and then the more I was teaching, I was a bit like I just felt like something was being moved through me. It wasn't necessarily that I was like, oh, I always wanted to open up a yoga studio. It was just, we knew that where this a nice space was. And I wanted to have a little bit more freedom to create the space that people came into. So that's kind of where it started from then. And it took a few months to renovate, and I started teaching along, and then I just went for it.
It's a lovely space, and actually it's bigger inside than, do you know what I mean? It's like one of those places where you look outside.
Yeah, it's quite long.
Yeah. Because I saw the pictures the other day. I was looking at obviously it was on your Instagram page. I'm sure
Yeah,
that's where I saw
maybe.
it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those ones where it's kind of looks like you say, it's like a double room, like it goes back. So there's space for a few people in there. It's quite nice.
I think we had a sound bath there in, I think it's maybe February, March, and we had 20 people.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Plus the lady who was running the sound bath, plus myself, so maybe 22 of us were in
great.
there. With yoga, I'd say probably the max is maybe 16, 17. Right. Saturday mornings can be quite busy, so but with COVID, we have to reduce
of course
that.
Yes, of course, everybody's trying to change it around, and I will actually I think I've got it written down. I'm sure I do.
I think you do. Yeah,
this is behind the scenes now, this kind of stuff. This won't be edited either, because I refuse to edit things because I'm lazy.
You're right.
Yeah, but so Elaine, if you tell us there's obviously lots of benefits from yoga, like, but what would you say would be the main benefits? Yeah, not just one.
Yeah, so I think from my own personal experience and from people who come to the studio, there's definitely a sense of relief. There's some kind of relief, and I often think sometimes it's quite difficult to like quantify these things or to explain them, but definitely a sense of relief, a sense of calmness, a sense of being more connected with yourself and trusting yourself a little bit more. And I think it helps you to come back to rational thought again, like if you're going through a hard time and you're maybe quite emotional over something and you come to yoga, there's that release. You can get quite a lot of release during a practice, and then that kind of calmness coming back to oneself again. Reduction in anxiety, but anxiety can be it tends to come and go. I find with anxiety, so it definitely helps the anxiety, but I think with anxiety there's always underlying kind of stuff there that maybe other modalities can help with. That's just my own personal experience. I find meditation very beneficial for anxiety with yoga. Like if I have a lot of adrenaline in my body and I'm feeling really fired up and maybe a bit angry or whatever, then a great physical yoga practice can help to move a lot of that. And then maybe to complement it with something else. But I think in the classes there's a sense of community and a sense of kind of feeling like you're part of something and you're not separate from other people. Like the people that are practicing with you, although you might not even speak to each other, there's just a sense of, we're kind of together in this. And that's what's kind of important for me, that we realize, we all have shared issues and shared heartaches and joys and all of those things. And sometimes we can feel really alone. And in a yoga class, I think that a lot of those barriers can be broken down, and actually we're sort of realizing that we're more connected. It sounds very like kind of out there, but
well, no, I understand though, because I do kind of draw parallels with what we do in jiu-jitsu, like you say, like we're rolling around the floor together trying to choke each other, but it is still a community. And like I mightn't get to speak to someone for that class or whatever, but it still feels like we were all in it together, whether it was 10 or there or 20 there or whatever. So I can understand that kind of thing, and I can understand what you're saying about anxiety with yoga. There is deeper lying things, but I found myself the surface level anxiety can be kind of eradicated, at least for that little while.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think like John and Megan went to your class, and John said to me the day after, or maybe it was that evening, he said he was wrecked after it, And I think that
oh no, sorry, John.
Well, I think don't apologize to him.
I'm joking.
But I think that's he was so surprised by that, because he loved it. He had a great time. But he was surprised by how physical it was. But like you say, it's one of those things where there's different types of classes and depending on the day. What would you say to someone who maybe is very kind of nervous about going in? Maybe you know, we all have an image of everybody there, svelte and yoga pants, and we're all like, everybody's looking amazing, and then in I walk or something, and I've got maybe an issue with my body or my confidence or whatever it is. What would you say to somebody who might see it as too much of a challenge for them?
Well, I can definitely understand, you know, that feeling for sure. And I think, you know, it can be always good to maybe touch base with the teacher before you kind of come to class. I think a lot of people that come in through the door feel like that. The majority, I would say. And, you know, if they can push through that, I think it will be of benefit to them at the end. But at the same time, I sometimes think pushing yourself when you really don't have the energy to do something can maybe deplete you at the beginning. I mean, most people at the end of a yoga class feel great, but it is just that getting there that can be quite tricky. But if they can come even to one class and just, you know, I always try my best to make everyone feel welcome, and we do quite a lot of, you know, centering and breathing at the beginning, and at the end we also do that. So I definitely think that, you know, they definitely won't feel like, oh my God, I'm going into this place and everyone is going to be perfect. You know, we have this idea, and even I feel like that sometimes, you know, I can kind of feel like that, but it's recognizing that sort of feeling within yourself, and quite a lot of times that can be the ego talking to us and saying, you know, but it's just a voice, you know, it's just a voice, and it doesn't define who you are. It's just maybe a little part of you that speaks from time to time. But yeah, there are lots of people who come to me and who tell me that after, oh my God, before I came here, you know, I wasn't even able to come. I drove the car up and I just couldn't go in, you know, and I really do understand that. But it's always good to maybe give me or somebody else a call so that I'm waiting for you, I'm checking out with you. And, you know, I'll always make sure to put people kind of down near the door or near a toilet or something like that, where they're, you know, they have lots of air and they feel good, and I'll make sure to introduce people to each other. So if you can, I would say try to come, but don't push yourself either.
I'd agree with that, especially with the part of, like, if it's doing your mental health damage by you trying to force yourself out the door, it's like, you know, don't. But like you say, and like my experiences go with Fusion, it's one of those things where if the owner or the coach or whatever it is at the time, or whoever they are there to get you in the door, to meet you at the door, or whatever it is, or like you said, leaving somebody beside a door is like the best thing to do, because it's like the worst feeling for me was always if I didn't see the exit, you know, I would just freak out, like, basically. But
absolutely,
if you like the sound of yoga, go. So I'm gonna just do the ad and then we'll be back.
Okay.
Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. Very close to messing that up. Fusion and Facebook are too close together, and I missed that. That's what happened last week. I just got them crossed over. Okay, Elaine, so here's straight to the point. Can anyone meditate?
Yes, they can. Yes, because there are so many different types of meditation. I mean, yoga in itself is a movement meditation. So, I mean, I would like to use myself as an example. I, you know, for years I used to try to meditate, and I was like, oh, I can't do it. My mind is too overactive, and I would feel completely useless at the end of it. I was just like, oh, I can't do it. And, you know, I've suffered from panic attacks. I've been hospitalized. I really have an overactive mind. And if I can do it, I would say that yes, because it's like, there's a really good analogy kind of in one of the ancient yogic texts, and it's about this warrior, and he's got the reins on the horses, and they use that as a metaphor for the mind. And it's like so true, you know, you're trying to pull the mind back. But yeah, I mean, it definitely takes a little bit of discipline and a little bit of dedication to it. But I think there are so many, like the process, the journey of when you start meditating, there's this kind of expectation, you know, this, I suppose, stereotype meditation is like this, or, you know, I should be like this. But actually what you find is that the more aware you kind of are of your thoughts, and the more, as time goes on, you start to actually really develop compassion towards yourself. Yeah. So rather than saying, oh God, my mind is all over the place today, it's like, oh, my mind is all over the place today.
Yeah, switching it around,
And what's going on really in my body today, like in my mind, and what's coming up for me, and what, you know, maybe what time of the month is it, or what happened, or am I processing something from years ago? You know, you just allow, there's kind of an allowing that happens. And I remember being on a retreat years ago, and I had a beautiful session and I was feeling really great, and then next thing, bang, the anxiety came, and I was like, oh God. And I remember one of the teachers, and I'll never forget this, it's like one of the best things I've ever heard. She said, rather than resisting the anxiety, can you in your mind sit down beside it and hold hands with it and say, oh, thank you, anxiety, for coming. I know you're always here to protect me. You know, and this type of thing, and it just kind of changes it around a little bit. It's like, well, actually, you know, oh, okay, you're here now, and it's okay that you're here. I'm not going to try and push you away, because that can happen with meditation. Anger comes up, or sadness, or, you know, a lot of joy, and we can be quite addicted to the joy in things and the happiness, rather than actually looking at the other emotions as well. So I think it's definitely a process. It's not only about meditation, it's about actually developing a sense of compassion for yourself, and it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like something that's going to happen in a week. It's in every single time you meditate is different. It's so different, and it's about an exploration of your own self and an openness to what comes up for you. And that can be hard at the beginning, because it's like, I want to be like this. Why am I not like this? And then you have to kind of, you start to accept parts of yourself more, you know?
Like it's so hard to be compassionate to yourself, and and you will know, as someone who's had anxiety before, obviously people are going to go in to you, and some of them are just going to be very, very good at meditating immediately, whether it's, I don't know the science of it, but the way their mind works means that they're good at meditating. They can get into that space. When somebody approaches you who maybe, we'll just say maybe is with you 4 weeks, and they're really having trouble with meditating, and maybe it's because they have mental health or anxiety, or they're grieving for someone, or whatever it is, like how would you go about, I suppose, kind of comforting them, or letting them know that it's that frustration that they find in not being able to meditate? How do you go about comforting them and helping them to get where they want to go? Do you know? That's a long question. I hope you were able to process it.
I mean, I suppose, again, this idea of wanting to get somewhere, but it might be important to go over their goals for coming to meditation. So, for example, they might say something like, I just want to be calmer during the day. I seem to fly off the handle all the time. Or I want to sleep better at night. So it depends what their goal is. Usually when we do a course, there will always be an element of home practice to the course. So we kind of make the bare bones of, so I'll give examples, and we'll do some meditations, and then it's kind of over to them for a few days until they come back to me again. And yeah, you will often have that. You'll often have, for example, anger. People say, I'm so angry when I meditate. Like, surely meditation is supposed to be about me feeling good. But it's kind of, and again, I'm not a psychotherapist, so if things come up for people, I always say, hey, maybe it's a good idea. I mean, I use myself as an example. I've been in therapy for years, you know, so I've no problem saying to people, you know, maybe it's something that I can't deal with, but it's very interesting that this emotion is coming up. And, you know, rather than resist it, perhaps you can make space for it in your practice, just to say, okay, I'm struggling with this emotion, and can I make space for whatever this emotion is? Because actually it's asking us to be heard. It wants to be heard. There's something inside of you that wants to have a little bit of space, and when you give it that space, usually it subsides. But maybe, you know, it's something you need to look into a little bit more. And another typical thing is people say, I can't meditate. I just can't do it. My mind is all over the place. And again, it's about noticing when the mind goes off and bringing it back to whatever the focal point that you've been given. So it could be the breath that you might be using, or it could be like a mantra, a word or a phrase, depending on what we're using in that class. But again, it's almost like training for a marathon or something in a way, but with your mind, because you have to say, so for example, when I started meditating first, I noticed how controlling I was with things. So I was like, oh yeah, like I had a really good session yesterday, so I want to only have good sessions. And the next day, it might be like, in my perception of things at that time, oh my God, I'm all over the place, and I'm really sad, and I'm angry, and I can't concentrate. My mind is all over the place. So again, it's that, okay, my mind is all over the place, and where yesterday I might have brought myself back 10 times. Today, I'm bringing myself back 110 times. And it's too much. There's two things you can do there. Continue on with the meditation, or if it's too much, you can actually just stop. And maybe that's not the right practice for you on that day. So some people pick a certain style of meditation, that's all they do. For me, I don't do that. I have different kind of tools in my bag, because I'm like, there are some times I cannot sit and do a breath meditation because it's too much. You want to let a little bit of emotion in, but I suppose you don't want to override it. Does that kind of, was there another part of that question?
No, that was great. No, there's obviously, so there's many styles.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I think I mentioned it already, but like I try not to mention the Beatles in every episode. We just they come up, all right. So they did transcendental meditation out in India in 68, I think it was, right? So this is the first kind of time, because I've been listening to them since I was 15 or 16. And I heard this story. Okay, so they were all given their word by the Maharishi Meshi Yoga. I think that's the correct pronunciation. Probably not. But so they were told to go away, and there was like guys from the Beach Boys there, and there was actors and actresses there and all that. So Mia Farrow, the actress, her sister was there, Prudence, and she meditated so much that she basically put herself into a room and just couldn't leave the room then, just out of pure fear or anxiety, or maybe lack of control. Like, you know, if she was locked into the meditation all the time, maybe that's where she felt in control. And they had to write a song for her to get her out of the room. And Dear Prudence, it's a beautiful song, actually.
I never knew the background to that story. Wow.
Yeah,
okay,
so that it's a beautiful song.
Ooh.
Turned out he was a bit of a creep, Maharishi Meshi Yoga, and that's why they legged it out of India. But they took so much from it, particularly George Harrison. He talked about it a lot. He always kept the meditation, and he obviously kept the transcendental kind of style. So have you done that style, or is that something? I've
never tried transcendental, but I've read a good bit about it. There's lots of research that's done on transcendental as well as mindfulness. They're the two probably most researched styles of meditation. But as far as I know, it's quite I believe that you have to kind of pay to go on the courses and stuff like that. So there aren't as much, there isn't as much literature available on it. Like if I just wanted to go and teach myself, I don't think it's possible to do that. I'm not sure, so I can be corrected on that. But as far as I know, it's a style of mantra meditation. So you're given a word or a phrase and you'll repeat the word over and over again. So it basically gives your mind something to do while you go into a higher state of consciousness. That's kind of that's what that is. The sort of background to it.
Right.
So I mean, it's very effective style of meditation. Really, I think Tina Turner used a lot of that as well when she was kind of after she broke up with her husband and she was kind of having a tough time. She used a lot of I think she just called it mantra meditation. She had a Buddhist chant actually. So mantra meditation typically would come from the more Vedic philosophy, so Hinduism, and then the Buddhist meditations like mindfulness mindfulness and more of the breath style meditations would come more from Buddhism. That's
there's a lot, isn't there?
Yeah, there's lots.
Loads. Like, I was just kind of thinking, I was lost in thought there to think like, so where do I start? But when I was talking about on episode 6 to my friend Calvin, he was on, and we were chatting about, and we weren't talking about meditation as such, but essentially it was kind of, now that I think of it, but I was at the time trying to go into a room, doesn't matter what room, just go into a room for 15 minutes and just try to think of nothing. Now, after speaking to you, I know that is nearly impossible because what I wasn't doing wasn't thinking of a word or, doing breathing or anything. I was just sitting there. And I guess I was trying to do it in my other room, which is just full of books, DVDs everywhere. There's so much visual aids around the place, that we were kind of talking about how difficult it is to actually sit there in a room. That's basically what it was down to. Sit there for 15 minutes. I was kind of challenging the people who were listening to do it, and it's hard. Like it's really very hard. Difficult.
Yeah.
So we should go to your class, get some tips and get some lessons and do it, because to me it sounds like something I would really like. It like yoga, I suppose, but probably even more meditation for me.
Yeah, I mean, like a kind of maybe a way to add to that, what you were trying to do is giving the mind nothing to do is like, it's really, it's next to impossible, But actually sitting in the room and being really present in the room, and it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, okay, can I notice, the colors in the room? Can I notice the texture in this room? Can I notice, the materials? I'm looking around. Can I smell the air? Can I feel the air against my skin? What am I sitting on? How does that feel? So it's kind of, you're sort of engaging the senses in your meditation, and this is just a very soft meditation that you could do every day. But when and then of course the mind will come in and you'll think, oh Jesus, I have to take this clothes out of the dryer, and then it's like, okay, that's a thought, great, I'm going to come back, and now I'm over at the door and I'm looking at the door, and I wonder, that's really interesting, that door, I wonder where that came from, who made that, or and if you can even engage in 5 minutes of that, you've actually kind of taken yourself out of your mind, and you're really present to the here and the now. And the more we do that, the more we build resilience in our brain, so that when we are in those fight or flight moments, we can kind of come back to that responding rather than that reaction that is in our subconscious that we've learnt or taken on.
Do you think it's important for people to know that they're the person who is running their meditation classes have their own struggles? They're not just like Zen completely, because there is that idea that we think that these people that we see, like now I'm going up to talking about gurus and stuff like that, but they think that they don't have those problems that everybody has, and everybody does. Like,
like I think it's a little bit of, it's our society really, isn't it? It's like we tend to put people on pedestals, and that type of thing. Yeah, like I suppose I wouldn't really resonate with somebody like that, because I'd want to, I'm quite goal orientated, so I suppose I'd like to know, oh, you know, I had this and then I overcame it by doing this, or they're kind of stories of inspiration, really. But there is that stereotype, yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely don't portray that, but at the same time, when people come to class, it's not my story. They're coming in their own story. So I've been to classes before where the teacher has sat down for 10 minutes and talked about their own problems.
Right.
That it's not about me. It's not my practice at that time. I'll always share anecdotes, not necessarily in yoga, but with meditation, because people tend to struggle. You have more time to talk with people in meditation classes or courses. But yeah, I think as long as there's a happy medium, you don't want somebody, like, I suppose, spilling all of their problems onto you, but you don't want somebody to pretend like everything is okay, because it kind of borderline perfectionism, and we just don't need any more of that.
It's the very false as well, isn't it? Like, you know.
Absolutely.
I know we have to go to this thing at some point, but how did you adapt to the lockdown?
Well, to be honest, it's definitely affected me in many ways. I think it's affected everyone. I went into lockdown myself, like my emotions, everything.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I just found it lots of fear, you know, I was scared, all of that. And then after a while, I started doing my online classes, and I did them for a couple of months. How
did they go?
Yeah, it was great, actually. I mean, I've never taught online before, so I was like, oh my God, you know.
Videoing yourself.
Seeing myself, and then I'm like out of breath, and because like a lot of the time I'll set up a class and I'll do demonstrating, and then when we're in flows, we tend to repeat sequences. So I was like, God, I'm actually a bit unfit here. But yeah, all of that thing, I had hang-ups on myself and the camera, and then I'd be like, oh God, I need to go and do something about this, or, you know, I need to maybe meditate on this. And it was great. I mean, in that sense, it was great to do things. But then I kind of came to a point where I felt like I'm actually pushing myself a little bit here. I need to take a step back. So I moved house just when the lockdown eased, and I've really been just taking it easy. We had a leak in the studio, so that had to be fixed. So it was actually in a sense a blessing, because I'm really catering to my own practice at the moment, and I felt like I really needed it. So yeah, it's in many ways it's been a blessing, but in other ways the unknown. I mean, I really don't know what's going to happen, so that's kind of scary too.
Of course, yeah. So probably the scariest thing in general is the fear of the unknown. And so you're not back open yet. You're waiting for this to be fixed, and
another couple of weeks. Right. We've almost got it fixed, and then I've had to like take out some of the units, and new units had to go in, and that sort of thing. But we're almost there. Yeah, good. We're almost there. Yeah.
So actually, I had that underneath here, but where can they find you on your, you know, in the world, the social media stuff, you know?
So I have a website, westsideyoga@alone.com. Okay. And also on Instagram. I tend to post on Instagram quite a lot. So you'll find me at just Westside Yoga Athlone. And Facebook also under the same name. I'm not using Facebook as much at the moment. I don't know why. I just find I'm more drawn to Instagram. For some reason, I feel quite drawn to that. But people can always, you know, message me once they find, if they Google Westside Yoga Athlone, they can, you know, always give me a call if they have any questions, or they want to know what style would suit them, or what class, or just to put their mind at ease.
We will put that information up on our Facebook page on Wednesday or Thursday. Maybe Thursday, because we'll put the episode out Wednesday, and we'll stick the information up anyway, so people can have a look. So what do you like to do when you're away from yoga and work and that?
I like to read. I love to read, actually, and it's only something I've got back into in the last few years, because I used to be able to read, because again I couldn't concentrate on what I was doing.
That's a problem.
But I love to read. I like to take walks. Where I live now, I'm actually I'm surrounded by loads of trees.
Oh,
and
nice.
when I go out in the morning, I really just like to take my time with a coffee or whatever. I have a cat. I just got a cat.
Okay.
So I'm learning all
Is it a
it's
kitten?
a kitten,
Right,
yeah. She's about 3 months old.
Okay.
So I'm really learning taking care of
Right.
someone else or
Yeah.
something else. I actually find it really therapeutic.
Really,
Yeah, it's just like looking at her, and I always think of things as signs. Like she's come at this time of my life, and I'm like, it's very interesting. So I'm
Yeah.
looking after her. What else do I do? Quite like music.
Yeah.
I like listening to music. I mean the theatre, but we can't go to the theatre right now.
Yeah.
I started playing meditation bowls for classes. I quite like
Oh,
that.
I
And
saw. Yeah, I saw that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so hopefully I can record a meditation soon with them.
I don't.
And-
I. Sorry to interrupt
No,
there,
no,
but
please
I didn't know what that was when you were doing it.
yeah.
And I just thought that it was like the start of like what you do at the start of a class or something.
Yeah, I mean, it can kind of
You
be a
can do
call
it.
to attention.
Okay.
Again, it's another technique in meditation.
Right.
So you can use sound bowls, or, for example, there are people who run sound baths. Like we had a lady in
Yeah.
who played bowls and like gongs and all of that type of thing. So that would be like a sound kind of healing sound
Yeah.
bath.
And what
I
was-
don't do that now, but the bowls
Okay.
that I play are just for kind of the shorter meditations in the classes.
If I was in the sound bath thing,
Yeah.
for example, just because trying to get a grasp of all the different types of meditations, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I know we were supposed to go into your hobbies, and I went right back. But
That's okay.
you know that someone hits a gong, right? But
Yeah.
what would I be doing? Am I breathing? Have I got a chant? Or-
So you're just relaxing.
Right.
At the beginning of that, you'd be taken into like a body relaxation to
Right.
relax the body. So you might do like maybe a body scan or something, or
Yeah.
just relax for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe do some breathing. Some of them they've done some breathing exercises, and then you lie down and you cover yourself up, and you basically absorb the sound in through your cells, and it's very therapeutic.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically you don't have to do a lot, so it's quite popular with people. I mean, you feel great at the end of it, like amazing. And yeah, I mean, it can be a really nice style of meditation.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's really nice experience. I highly recommend it.
I should probably do some sort of meditation.
Yeah.
To do a class, because I like I think I don't know if I said actually on the mic or off the mic, but I want to like try it out, what we've been talking about and what I've talked about with other people, and come back on here and say, well, I had the experience of this, and I this is what I thought of it. Like, we had a hypnotherapist on speaking about that, and it's something that I was probably very cynical about. I wouldn't say I'm the same with meditation, but I was quite cynical about hypnotherapy, and like I said, it was more to do with hypnosis, really, and
Okay.
about the idea of when I was a kid, and you know, we're roughly the same age, so you probably remember these hypnotists on stage, you know, people
Yeah.
like chickens and stuff, and to me that was like weird. So but it was hypnotherapy was the point that I was missing, the therapy part.
Yeah.
And so it's something I would like to try, and I suppose meditation would probably be something that one might suit me as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend, there are different apps that you can get. Insight Timer has one that you can kind of put on at any time of the day, and it's loads of different styles. But one I really like, it's actually how I started meditating, is called One Giant Mind.
Okay.
And it's a free app, and basically they have 12-day programs. So programs are always really good because you're going back every day and you see the progress. But that style is mantra meditation, and they have you doing, I think it's 15 minutes a day, but it's really, the guy explains it really well. And then you can see your own progress within the app. So I quite like that. I think it's good to have a discipline with it.
Yeah.
And just say, I'm showing up every day, even if it's for 5 minutes. Like, it doesn't, the length at the beginning doesn't necessarily matter. It's just more, can I see a pattern after I've done it every day for 5 days? Yeah. And I think the important thing to remember is, and I'm saying this to myself as much as anyone else, you know, with attaining a more positive mental state, we have to put in effort every day.
Exactly, yeah.
Whatever it is. And like, there are days, you know, where we don't feel like doing it, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be all the time, but having a discipline of a practice that works for you, whatever it is, you know, it can be jiu-jitsu. It doesn't have to be, you know, it might not be meditation for some people, and that's fine. It's just finding something that resonates with you, and then sort of saying to yourself, I'm going to put aside this time every day because I'm committed to myself, kind of. But it's not always easy. I remember somebody said that to me years ago, and I was like, I really took it on, but I didn't practice it. Yeah. And it's only when I started practicing it, I was like, okay, get up, do it.
Yeah, but you're right, because it's you know, and it's not my favorite saying, but like, that self-care thing it's so important with mental health, because, you know, if you're rehabilitating yourself with an injury physically, like, you're going to have to do it every day. You're going to have to work on it. You know, for the first 4 or 5 years after I got like very unwell, like after my first breakdown, we'll say, I kind of resisted it, you know, and I didn't want to do anything. I just thought, well, this is it now, you know, there's nothing I can do. But as I kind of started to read up about it and figure things out that I knew would help it through fitness and different things, then I knew it was an everyday thing. And like you say, it doesn't have to be that same thing every day. Like, maybe if you're like, I'm quite tired today, I'm not going to go for a run, you can go and do something else. You can read a book. I find that at the moment is my meditation, reading a book, because if it's good enough, the book, I mean, the quality of the writing, if it's good enough, it will take you out of that anxiety, and that's so important. So finding something that can take you away from that, it may be football, whatever it is. I mean, just chatting, friends, playing computer games. Sometimes, I'm talking to younger people now, obviously, but if you're at home playing your PlayStation and your mom's giving out, like, sometimes that's all right. Like, you know, sometimes you're allowed to sit and just do something that makes you feel a little bit better for that moment, and it's important, you know. And I hope now I've learned more about meditation and yoga. I hope more people will go to Westside Yoga, obviously. Yes. Most importantly, that's the main one you have to go to. But take it up and try it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose try everything once, isn't that what they say? And, you know, as well as that, I think as well, I just wanted to say a little bit about meditation when we were talking about there. You know, it is quite a strong practice. Yeah. And I definitely think that, you know, for some people, when they meditate, it can bring up a lot of past traumas, and it's always good to be working with somebody who knows what they're doing, or be working with, like, say, if you're working on your own at home, and, you know, to maybe, if lots of stuff is coming up, to maybe seek help elsewhere, just to kind of help you navigate that, because there can be a tendency with it where things can come up that are quite strong the more into it you go. And the same thing with yoga as well. I mean, with yoga, we're moving parts of the body, and we're releasing old past traumas that we've held in our muscles and our cells, you know. And like, you might find yourself weeping, or maybe you have an emotional process that happens for a few days. So definitely that self-care, that downtime, reflecting on it, you know, just that side of it as well, to always kind of, because some of these things can be quite addictive as well, and it's like, it's always good to kind of have a reflective look at what's right for you, like you said. A lot of those things would be you know, with meditation and stuff, they bring the stuff up where you might think you've buried it for good or whatever, and just be wary of those kind of things, and know that there's actually other people out there who can help you with those things, and you know, look after yourselves. Like, definitely. It's been very nice to talk to you, Elaine. Thank you so much. It's so nice to come on, and thanks so much for creating this podcast. Well done. It's amazing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Must have been quite weird for this random podcast to message you about coming on, but probably should have told you that. I knew John and Megan had been in there, but no, we really appreciate you coming on, Elaine. We have to do the usual things at the end, you know, my favourite bits where we have to just try and sell the podcast. Thank you to John, as always, for his hard work, and to his family and Megan. thank you to Jer, my mum, my dad, my grandfather. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, get on there. We are on Facebook at the Wheatley. Instagram is Wheatley_there, and Twitter is, I think that's Wheatley the Wheatley. It's the one I always mess up. Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google Podcasts, all those. I think there's about 8 of them. You, if you're already listening, you'll know it. But Spotify and Apple are kind of the main two that people are on. We have the Discord community thing going. It's mostly just me talking about films, but if you want to hear that, it's fine. Like, you know. But no, some people have put up some songs that they like and things, so it's good. So if you want to join that, send me a message or John a message, and we'll get you an invite sent out to you. If you don't know what Discord is, that's all right. I didn't either. Thanks to everyone for listening, as always. Once again, Elaine, thank you.
Thanks so much.
And have a lovely rest of your Monday, Bank Holiday Monday.
You too.
Thank you. So take care, everyone, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.